Now I'm trying to do a better job of focusing in the camera, if nothing else, to be able to see what this Dr. Beinart has brought us. Now, for the shir yesterday, we went into some detail about how the Jews lived in Babylonia. Now, we call it, the word for this in Hebrew is Bavel. So Bavel, we call it Bavel. And how it is that this area became so prestigious and so important. So let's look over here. Here's these different numbers here. So where's number 1? So number 1 is, and if we can, we're going to try to see where the arrows go and how they connect. So he says the end of the 6th century, he writes here, 2 academies, one was called Sura and Pumbedisa. Now the 6th century is one, this is Babel, is like the years 500. Now we're starting to the end of the 500s. He says, resume activities that the end of this time in these 2 places, one called Sura, and I'm going to try to find it on the map, and here is Sura right here. This, in case you try to locate what we're looking at here, this is like maybe we'll look at it in a minute. This is the Euphrates River. That's what I want to say, and this is the Tigris River. Okay, so in this valley right here is a very rich, fertile area. A lot of things develop along it and have throughout the centuries and even today. Here's Mosul, if you listen to the news about the wars that we fought in different places in the same area. There's nothing new about it. So here's a picture of Sura. So here is Sura right on the Euphrates River. Now Pumbedita is over here, up closer, up a little bit further north, on once again on the Euphrates River. So at the end of these 2 academies, one was Sura and the other one was Pumbedisa, resume activities and become spiritual center for all Jewry. In other words, we saw the structure of the yeshiva before, and we saw how it is that there are so many people learning permanently in this yeshiva. Of course, it takes a lot of money to be able to feed those people and house them. Now, that's a whole thing that exists within the Jewish community that we are indentured to our Torah. And as a result of that, we support it wherever it is. So that's the first one we see. Then we'll go to number 2. Now, Baghdad, and he's showing us where Baghdad is. I guess it's right in the center of here. Here's Baghdad, right there, right on the Tigris River, but it's very close to the Euphrates River. Really rich area. The center of authority and seat of the exilarch. Many Jews lived in Karch, quarter of the city. This part of the city, he says that's called Karch. I'm not that familiar with it. I haven't seen that idea before. So, number 3, pillars of the community. His court bankers, Yosef ben Pinchas, and Aaron ben Amram. We mentioned that before in his lecture yesterday. They collect taxes and lend money to the caliph. So they're tax collectors, which we understand can be a dangerous business. And on the other hand, it's lucrative. So they did this and they worked with the caliph. Caliph is what? Is a Muslim. The head of the Muslim court. It's the head. I don't really want to get into the caliphate. Number 4, the end of the 9th century. So this is the 800s. Prestige and status of academy ebbed due to rivalry and the establishment of new centers of learning in the diaspora. Most Gaonim reside in Baghdad. Now, let me read it again. I didn't read it so great, so I can understand it better. So the Gaonate, these tremendous academies with these great outpouring of the light of Torah. Prestige and status of academies ebb due to rivalry, right? Rivalry, I'm not sure what rivalry means. He means, and the establishment of new centers of learning in the diaspora. As we begin to see that in northern Italy, we see some tremendous things that came out not too long after this. Maybe in Africa, in different places. Most Gaonim reside at this time in Baghdad. We just had a picture of Baghdad up there. They move at that time. And number 5. Where's number 5 here? These years now, the years 922 to 923, Saja ben Yosef, that is this Gaon, emerges in polemic with Aaron ben Meir, who tries to restore Palestinian Academy to its former glory. Now, this was hinted at or just mentioned in the introduction that we had to this yet from yesterday. Saja ben Yosef engages. He was a great writer. He also fought with the Karaim, with the Karaites. He wrote a polemic, that is a work, with Aaron ben Meir, who was actually the head of the community in Palestine. Because Palestine was rivaling, this is the rival that maybe we talked about previously, that was beginning to rival in scholarship and production with Babylon. He says, this Aaron ben Meir, who tries to restore Palestinian Academy to its former glory, in other words, at the time of the Rabbi Yochanan, for example. Number 6. Number 6 is down here at the bottom, and this is where it stops. He says, in the year 928, the exile arch, who was David ben Zakkai, appoints Rav Saja as Gaon of the Surah Academy. So we understand these two places, Pumbedisa and Surah, are traditions, the traditions of the Jewish people from that point and up until that point, were shown throughout the whole world. As Gaon of Surah Academy, he became the Gaon over there. He restores it to its former greatness. He is able to restore it. The year 930, open conflict begins between Saja Gaon and David ben Zakkai, who was championed by the Gaon of Pumbedisa. Now this is a story about the Karaim, about how this split, because David ben Zakkai went on to found the Karaites. Saja was deposed from the Gaonate, but he was reinstated only in the year 937. So let's go over here. Just give me a second. Turn the page around. We'll start looking at the situation. Now, let me bring the map back so we can see it in its entirety. Spain, it's right here. Italy. I call this the Yugoslavia, but I guess they call it the Baltic state. Not the Baltic states. Oh gosh, it is the Baltic states. It's whatever it is. Yugoslavia and Turkey, and then going all the way over here to Pumbedisa, Surah, and then in Baghdad. Makes a few different places. But this is in the peninsula that's surrounding the emergence of these two rivers became a very, very rich area. So now we want to say like this. He wants to read this. The bonds between Babylonia, Eretz Yisrael, and the diaspora. So we're going to get some different kinds of dates, different kinds of ideas of where the power of the Jewish people has gone. So we're going to write like this. Again, just it's a little bit unwieldy, this book, because it's big. So he writes like this. The contacts between the Babylonian Gaonim and the diaspora were numerous and widespread. The Gaonate became the spiritual and halachic center for Jewry. What do we do? How do we act? Issuing instructions and guidance both to the Eastern and Western Jewish communities. The diaspora connection was important for establishing a consensus regarding halachic doctrine. What exactly halacha is really, the word in Hebrew means the way we travel, the way we walk. Holech means to walk. In other words, how exactly given any given situation of difficulty, of strife, which way, how do you handle it? You do it this way, do it that way, do it up, do it down, which ways? So there the halacha authority is going to try to determine how you decide. Instrumental in achieving this goal were the emissaries sent by the Gaonim to the diaspora. So now we see that this was going to many places where the Jews were scattered. Students from the Babylonian academies and rabbinical judges are ordained by the Gaonim. These are people that had certification. They were the vanguard of the movement that helped create and maintain the Jewish halachic consensus during the lifespan of the Babylonian centers of learning. So in other words, this is what we have. We have a scattered Jewish people, mostly in the Mediterranean basin, north in Europe and south in Africa, North Africa. How do they maintain themselves? So the Gaon was constantly pumping out Torah from this center, like that splash of Torah that is in the water. The ripples kept coming out of the vibrations, but in the form of people who were certified, that they knew the traditions of the Jewish people and could tell people how to behave. Ties with the diasporas also found expression in the financial support extended by the Jewish communities to the academies. As I said before, if you're going to have 400 permanent scholars, they have to be fed and housed. That requires tzedakah. That's charity. Considerable correspondence about which was found in the Cairo Geniza, because how the money changes hands so that people can be supported. So this institution of the study of Torah can be supported. These relations also helped to foster international commercial ties in which Jews played a very important role. So you see that in order to support the wellspring that was coming out of Babylon, that is in Surah and Pumbedisa and then later in Baghdad, spread throughout the entire world. And one of the ways in which it was done is by the fact that they required a great deal of charity. So the charity had to come from the entire European basin, and this therefore established connections going around and around and around with Pumbedisa, Surah, Baghdad, from which it comes. Other communities, chiefly in Italy and Germany, had very close ties with the academies in Palestine, and they adopted the Palestinian, that is the Eretz Yisrael tradition, primarily in matters of liturgical poetry. Perhaps he means the study of mysticism. So here we see, right there, you see that the Babylonian center really became what we understand as Ashkenaz Judaism, which has gone through a lot of changes too. We'll see that as well. But that is the Jews of Northern Europe. But the Jews of the Mediterranean basin, Italy, Spain, north part of Africa, were greatly influenced by the yeshivas of Eretz Yisrael, where they were dealing more. And what's his last word in Eretz Yisrael? He says, traditionally, primarily in matters of liturgical poetry. What liturgical poetry means is the use of metaphor and poetry and different sensitivities in that direction to be able to approach God and describe our relationship with God or what we want it to be. So this is a very, very soft, let's say, kind of way of understanding sweetness. That's the idea over there. At any rate, this is Baruch Fleischman. This is the Tikkun Elevator Kollel.